The breaking point. Dr. Elena Santos stood at the observation deck of Titan Station, watching Saturn's rings shimmer in the eternal night. 300 years had passed since the Hegemony Alliance had forcibly quarantined humanity to the Sol system and its immediate vicinity. Their reason: potentially destructive evolutionary trajectory. Their method: quantum barrier fields that prevented any human vessel from crossing the designated boundaries. But today would change everything. Final calculations are complete, Doctor, announced her AI assistant, HFY. The quantum displays surrounding her workstation showed the culmination of 20 years of research, the mathematical proof that would shatter the hegemony's barriers. The discovery hadn't come from weapons research or brute force approaches. Instead, it emerged from humanity's desperate need to understand the very fabric of spacetime. While the hegemony expected them to eventually destroy themselves, humanity had turned their isolation into an crucible of innovation. Send the data to Admiral Chen, Elena instructed, her dark eyes reflecting the holographic equations floating before her. And ARI. Delete all local copies of the research. Protocol Omega. The AI's avatar flickered with concern. Doctor, are you certain? This represents everything, Elena finished. And that's exactly why we can't risk the hegemony finding it if they breach our security again. Across the solar system, humanity's secret shipyards had already begun construction. The calculations Elena had discovered would allow them to build vessels capable of phasing through the quantum barriers by existing in a state of temporal uncertainty. It wasn't so much about breaking the barriers as it was about slipping between the very moments they existed. Admiral Sarah Chen received the transmission while inspecting the nearly completed TSS Artemis, humanity's first quantum phase vessel. Unlike the sleek ships of the hegemony, the Artemis was all sharp angles and nested geometric patterns, its hull composed of metamaterials that could alter their fundamental properties on command. The calculations check out, her science officer confirmed. Dr. Santos has done it. We can begin final calibrations within the week. Sarah ran her hand along the ship's outer hull, feeling the subtle vibrations of power flowing through its crystalline matrix. Inform all command staff. Operation Starcross begins in 7 days. It's time humanity reminded the galaxy why they feared us in the first place. But as preparations accelerated, none of them could have known that the hegemony's barrier served a dual purpose, not just keeping humanity in, but keeping something far more ancient out, something that had been waiting, watching, and growing stronger in the dark spaces between stars. The quarantine had never been about humanity's potential for violence. It had been about their potential for survival. Silent thunder. The TSS Artemis hung in the void beyond Pluto's orbit, its quantum phase drive humming with potential energy. Inside the bridge, Admiral Chen watched as her crew made final preparations for humanity's first attempt to breach the barrier that had contained them for 3 centuries. All systems are nominal, reported Commander James Rodriguez, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls. Quantum field generators at 98% efficiency. Dr. Santos stood at a secondary console, monitoring the complex equations that governed their experimental drive. The mathematical models are holding stable, Admiral. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Sarah nodded, her expression grave. Begin phase sequence. Let's remind the galaxy that you can't cage evolution. The Artemis's outer hull began to shimmer, its metamaterial construction responding to the quantum fields coursing through it. To any observer, the ship would appear to blur, as though viewing it through heat waves rising from hot pavement. The effect intensified until the vessel seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously, a ghost image of possibilities. Phase state achieved, Elena announced. The ship is now existing in a quantum superposition. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Take us to the barrier. The Artemis moved silently through space, approaching the invisible wall that had imprisoned humanity. As they drew closer, the barrier became visible, a subtle distortion in the starfield, like a soap bubble stretched across the cosmos. Barrier contact in 30 seconds, Rodriguez reported. All departments report ready. Sarah stood from her command chair, her hands clasped behind her back. Broadcast on all frequencies, standard language pack. Channel open. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Alliance vessel Artemis. To any hegemony vessels monitoring this sector, your barrier ends today. Humanity will no longer accept imprisonment. The barrier loomed before them, its quantum structure becoming more apparent as they approach. Subtle patterns of energy danced across its surface, a testament to the advanced technology that had kept humanity contained for so long. Contact in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Artemis met the barrier, and for a moment, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. Then, like a ghost passing through a wall, the ship slipped between the very moments the barrier existed, passing through as though it wasn't there at all. Breach successful, Elena exclaimed, her voice thick with emotion. We're through. The bridge crew erupted in cheers, but Sarah raised her hand for silence. Maintain phase state. Begin passive sensor suites. Let's see what's changed out here in 300 years. The data began flowing in immediately. The nearest hegemony monitoring station was less than a light year away, its sensors completely blind to their quantum-phased vessel. Beyond that, they detected the regular patterns of trade routes, the energy signatures of populated worlds, and the bustling activity of a galaxy that had continued without them. Multiple radiological signatures detected, announced the sensor officer. Consistent with hegemony warships. Nearest squadron is 3 light hours from our position. Sarah nodded. Plot a course to the hegemony capital. It's time we delivered our message in person. But before they could proceed, Elena's console erupted with warnings. Admiral, I'm detecting something strange. There's a pattern in the background radiation out here, something we couldn't see from inside the barrier. Define strange, Doctor. Elena's fingers flew across her console. It's like a pulse. Regular intervals, but incredibly weak. If I didn't know better, I'd say it was counting down. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Counting down to what? Unknown, but the pattern extends in all directions. Whatever it is, it's everywhere out here. Elena looked up, her face pale. Admiral, I don't think we were the only ones being kept in isolation. I think the barrier was keeping something else out. The implications hung heavy in the air. Humanity had just breached their prison, but in doing so, they might have inadvertently unlocked something far more dangerous than themselves. Keep monitoring that signal, Sarah ordered, and begin decryption protocols. If there's a message hidden in that countdown, I want to know what it says before whatever it's counting down to arrives. As the Artemis glided silently through enemy space, its crew couldn't shake the feeling that they had stumbled into something far larger than their bid for freedom. The galaxy's darkness seemed to press in around them, and in that darkness, something ancient was stirring. The countdown continued, its pulse echoing through the void like a cosmic heartbeat, marking the moments until everything would change. The Awakening. 2 days into hegemony space, the Artemis crew had managed to decrypt part of the mysterious signal. Elena worked tirelessly at her station, dark circles under her eyes betraying her lack of sleep. It's not just a countdown, she explained to Admiral Chen in the ship's conference room. It's a wake-up call. The holographic display showed the decoded patterns, complex geometric shapes that shifted and evolved like living things. These patterns match ancient warning glyphs found in archaeological sites across Earth, patterns we dismissed as primitive art. You're saying something put those warnings there? Sarah asked, studying the shifting symbols. Before recorded history, not just on Earth, Elena continued. I've been comparing the patterns to hegemony archaeological databases we've managed to access. These same symbols appear on every world that's ever developed sentient life. They're like markers or scars. Commander Rodriguez leaned forward. Scars from what? Before Elena could answer, the ship's AI interrupted. Admiral, priority alert. Multiple hegemony vessels have altered course to intercept our projected path. They still cannot detect us, but they're establishing a search grid. Sarah straightened. How many ships? 17 capital ships, plus support vessels. They're implementing a quantum detection grid. Our phase state may not remain effective if they activate it. Show me. The holographic display shifted to show the approaching hegemony fleet. Their ships were organic curves and flowing lines, beautiful but alien. Energy patterns between the vessels began to form a web of detection fields. We need to change course, Rodriguez suggested. We can't risk. Wait, Elena interrupted, her eyes wide. The countdown signal, it's accelerating. The fleet's detection grid is affecting it somehow. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Explain. The patterns we discovered, they're not just warnings. They're containment symbols. The ancient civilizations weren't just leaving warnings. They were actively suppressing something. And the hegemony's quantum fields are interfering with that suppression. As if in response to her words, space itself seemed to shudder. The Artemis's sensors screamed warnings as reality rippled around them. Through the bridge viewport, they watched in horror as patches of space began to unfold. Multiple spatial anomalies detected. The sensor officer reported, "Something's coming through." The hegemony fleet had noticed it too. Their neat formations scattered as dark shapes emerged from the dimensional rifts. Massive forms that seemed to defy Euclidean geometry, trailing tendrils of what looked like living darkness. By all that's holy, Rodriguez whispered, "What are they?" Elena's voice shook as she answered. The markers called them the Void Singers. They're what comes before civilization, and after it. They seed worlds with life, watch it evolve, and when it reaches a certain point, they harvest it. Sarah finished, understanding dawning. The hegemony didn't quarantine us because they feared us. They did it because we were close to the harvesting point. They were trying to hide us. The Void Singers moved with impossible grace, their dark forms making a mockery of physics. The hegemony fleet opened fire, their advanced weapons seeming little more than fireworks against the ancient entities. "Admiral," Elena said urgently, "the quantum mathematics we developed, the ones that let us phase through the barrier, they're not just about moving through space. If we modify the equations, we might be able to." "To what, Doctor?" "To sing back." Sarah looked at the destruction unfolding before them. The hegemony ships were fighting bravely, but they were hopelessly outmatched. These were the same beings that had imprisoned humanity, yet now they faced annihilation. How long to modify the drive? An hour, maybe less. But Admiral, this was never tested. The power requirements alone could tear the ship apart. Sarah watched another hegemony vessel disappear into a Void Singer's embrace. Their jailers were dying, and with them, perhaps the last hope of understanding why they'd done what they'd done. "Begin the modifications," she ordered, "and open a channel to the hegemony fleet." The crew stared at her in shock. Rodriguez found his voice first. "Admiral, if we break our phase state, we reveal ourselves, yes, but we're past hiding now." Sarah stood straight, her decision made. Humanity wanted its freedom. Well, here it is, along with the responsibility that comes with it. We're about to show the galaxy exactly what humanity does in a crisis. As Elena rushed to modify the quantum drive, Sarah prepared to address the hegemony fleet. The Void Singers continued their inexorable advance, and the countdown signal reached a fever pitch. The time for secrets was over. Now would come the moment that would define humanity's true place in the cosmos. Defiance. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Alliance vessel Artemis to all hegemony ships. We are dropping phase cloak and offering assistance. Stand by for quantum frequency coordination. The Artemis shimmered into visible existence amidst the chaos of battle. The hegemony fleet's reaction was immediate. Weapons locked on, but held fire as they processed the impossible appearance of a human vessel outside the barrier. Multiple incoming transmissions. the communications officer reported. They're asking how we got here. Send them the modified quantum equations, Sarah ordered, along with Dr. Santos' analysis of the Void Singers. Make it clear we understand what's at stake. Elena worked furiously at her station, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces as she reprogrammed the quantum drive. The modifications are at 60%. We'll only get one shot at this, Admiral. The nearest Void Singer turned its impossible geometry toward the Artemis, sensing something different about the vessel. Where the entity's presence touched space, reality itself seemed to fray and unravel. A new voice filled the bridge, musical, alien, yet understandable. This is High Commander Harlith of the Hegemony Defense Force. Human vessel, your presence here violates all standing quarantine protocols. With respect, Commander, Sarah responded, your protocols just became irrelevant. We've decoded the ancient signals. We know what the Void Singers are, and we might have a way to stop them. There was a pause as another hegemony ship disappeared into the cosmic horror's embrace. Explain. The quantum mathematics we developed to breach your barrier. They're based on the same principles the ancients used to bind the Void Singers originally. We can't destroy them, but we might be able to send them back to sleep. The Artemis shuddered as a tendril of living darkness brushed against their hull. The quantum fields protecting the ship flared, barely holding. Modifications at 80%, Elena reported. But Admiral, we're seeing power fluctuations. The core might not handle the load. Sarah gripped her command chair as another tremor rocked the ship. The Void Singers aren't just harvesting civilizations, are they, Commander? They're harvesting consciousness itself. Evolution. The very thing you accused humanity of pursuing too aggressively. Your species adapts too quickly, Harlith admitted. You solve problems in years that took other centuries. We feared you would draw their attention before you were ready. Well, we're ready now. All hegemony vessels, transmitting quantum frequency patterns, synchronize your fields with ours on my mark. The massive Void Singers converged on their position, perhaps sensing the threat. Their forms twisted space itself, creating a maelstrom of distorted physics around the combined fleet. Modifications complete, Elena announced. But Admiral, powering this will burn out our core. We won't be able to phase back through the barrier. Sarah smiled grimly. Bold of you to assume we'd want to go back to our cage, Doctor. All ships, execute quantum field synchronization. Let's show these cosmic horrors what happens when you back humanity into a corner. The Artemis's quantum drive screamed as it channeled power beyond its design specifications. The ship's metamaterial hull began to resonate, not just phasing through reality but actively reshaping it. The hegemony fleet's energy fields linked with theirs, amplifying the effect. Together, human and hegemony technology created something new. A quantum harmony that rippled through space like a song of pure mathematics. The Void Singers recoiled, their impossible forms wavering as the fundamental forces they had exploited for eons turned against them. It's working, Elena exclaimed. The dimensional rifts are beginning to. The ship lurched violently. Core breach imminent, Rodriguez warned. We can't maintain this level of output. Sarah stood, her voice carrying over the chaos. We didn't spend 300 years in isolation just to fail now. Divert all power to the quantum drive. Every last jewel. Show them why humanity doesn't just survive. We transcend. Legacy of stars. The combined quantum resonance of human and hegemony technology reached a crescendo, transforming the very fabric of space around them. The Void Singers writhed in the grip of mathematical forces that echoed the ancient bindings that had once contained them. Hull integrity critical, Rodriguez reported, his voice barely audible over the groaning of stressed metal. We're losing containment. The Artemis's metamaterial structure was beginning to break down at the molecular level, unable to withstand the forces it was channeling. Throughout the ship, circuits melted and crystal matrices shattered as they pushed beyond their design limits. Elena worked frantically at her station, trying to maintain the quantum harmonics. The resonance is stable, but we need more power to complete the binding process. Hegemony vessels reporting similar power failures. Communications added. They can't maintain the field much longer. Sarah watched as the Void Singers began to retreat from the quantum song, their impossible geometries folding in on themselves. But it wasn't enough. They needed something more, one final push to seal the dimensional rifts. Dr. Santos, she called out. You said our quantum drive exists in multiple states simultaneously, correct? Elena looked up, understanding dawning in her eyes. Yes, but Admiral, if we collapse all potential states into a single moment, we create one perfect moment of resonance, enough to complete the binding. It would tear the ship apart. Sarah smiled. But it would work. Command code Chen Alpha 001. Transfer all command functions to my station. The crew stared at her in horror as they realized her intent. Rodriguez stepped forward. Admiral, there has to be another way. There is no other way, Commander. And that's why they feared us. Because humanity always does what must be done. She looked at her crew, pride evident in her expression. It has been an honor. Now go. Get to the escape pods. Admiral. That's an order, Commander. All hands, abandon ship. As the crew reluctantly evacuated, Sarah opened a channel to the Hegemony fleet. Commander Karlith, prepare your vessels to retrieve our escape pods. And remember what you see here today. Remember that humanity didn't just break free. We saved everyone. She began the quantum collapse sequence, watching as the ship's multiple quantum states began to converge. The Artemis's hull became transparent, then blindingly bright as infinite possibilities collapsed into a single, perfect moment. In that moment, Sarah Chen saw everything. All the paths humanity might have taken, all the futures that could have been. And she understood that this, perhaps, was what evolution truly meant. The wisdom to choose which future to make real. The quantum resonance reached impossible levels as the Artemis sacrificed itself to create one pure note in the cosmic symphony. The Void Singers screamed in frequencies that shattered nearby stars, their forms crumpling as ancient bindings reasserted themselves. The dimensional rifts sealed with a reality-bending thunderclap. Where the Void Singers had been, only empty space remained, marked by a subtle quantum frequency that would keep them sleeping for eons to come. In the aftermath, as the Hegemony fleet retrieved the Artemis's escape pods, Elena watched the last traces of the ship fade away. The quantum equations that had made their victory possible still danced in her mind, but now she understood their true significance. The Hegemony had imprisoned humanity out of fear of their potential, their adaptability, their relentless drive to overcome any obstacle. But in doing so, they had created exactly what the galaxy needed, a species that could face the impossible and find a way forward. 3 days later, the Hegemony Council convened an emergency session. The barrier around Sol would be dismantled. Humanity would not only be freed but welcomed as equals. Their punishment had become their crucible, transforming them into something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that had evolved not just to survive, but to protect. As Elena stood before the council, preparing to share humanity's quantum discoveries, she thought of Sarah Chen and the Artemis. They had wanted freedom, but they had found something greater: purpose. The stars beckoned, no longer as distant lights behind a barrier, but as lights humanity would now help keep burning. For in proving themselves worthy of freedom, they had become the guardians of something far more precious, the very future itself. The end.